Hi, welcome to our channel True Up. We are all aware of TSMC's role as a vital link in the global semiconductor supply chain. Although it is not the only company capable of producing cutting-edge logic circuits, TSMC is the sole feasible option for chip design firms in many cases, and it is likely to stay so for the foreseeable future. Control of TSMC's Taiwanese foundries may thus appear to be a critical issue in Beijing's willingness to risk pursuing unification by force, as well as for other governments considering whether to take a firm stand against this. Would China invade Taiwan for TSMC now that it has the military capability to easily overpower Taiwan? Let us now return to the subject at hand. Would China invade Taiwan in search of TSMC? Okay, I can think of numerous reasons why mainland China wants to launch a military campaign against Taiwan, but TSMC is not one of them. The explanation is simple: TSMC cannot function independently. Allow me to elaborate. TSMC was originally essentially a factory for hire. While TSMC has a lot of inherent, proprietary technological know-how on how to create cutting-edge semiconductors, these technical know-how are not difficult to overcome. Under normal conditions, Samsung will struggle to catch up to TSMC. However, if a military crisis breaks out, TSMC's output would be halted. Customers like Qualcomm, Nvidia, and AMD will gradually move production to Samsung. Most critically, TSMC cannot produce these chips on its own. TSMC is hopelessly reliant on ASML for high-tech equipment. High-tech items, like ASML's lithographic equipment, are a nuisance to use. It is not truly a standardized component, each machine sold is unique, and they often vary greatly. Most crucially, it needs the ongoing supervision of a local team of engineers. In other words, TSMC cannot create semiconductors without direct on-site support from ASML, and these machines require a regular supply of consumables and replacement parts to keep them functioning properly. ASML is one of the most essential vendors on whom TSMC relies. The reality is that there are hundreds of suppliers, the most of whom are Americans, Japanese, or Europeans, who offer equipment and expensive materials that enable semiconductor manufacture to take place. Even if the PRC manages to seize TSMC's actual plant, all of these supplies will be interrupted, to put it kindly. It is not difficult to foresee a concerted economic embargo against the PRC shortly thereafter. TSMC will be unable to manufacture any of those high-end semiconductors on its own without consistent supplies of raw materials and engineering help. Second, even after a successful invasion, Beijing cannot assume access to TSMC's cutting-edge capabilities. As Taiwan's school system fails to produce enough professionals, TSMC's personnel is increasingly being recruited from overseas. Workers with foreign citizenship are unlikely to stay in a Chinese-occupied Taiwan voluntarily, and holding them by force would impose further political costs on China. Even if Taiwanese officials destroy TSMC's foundries in the face of Chinese control, Beijing must allow for damage to the facilities during warfare. This brings us to the most essential reason why TSMC is unlikely to play a significant role in Beijing's calculations about Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party, led by Xi Jinping, has said unequivocally that obtaining independence in core technologies such as semiconductors is critical for China's future. This entails reducing reliance on a multinational supply network dominated by corporations from the United States or its allies. Taking ownership of TSMC would not achieve this purpose since TSMC's place in the global value chain is dependent on inputs from enterprises in the United States, Europe, and Japan. In other words, if war breaks out in Taiwan, TSMC will swiftly become obsolete since all supply would be disrupted and TSMC's clients will migrate to a different vendor to manufacture their products. Furthermore, invasion is a high-risk effort that, even if successful, would have significant negative consequences for China. It can be expected only if China's authorities believe that the immediate political stakes outweigh the military dangers, indicating a restricted range of alternatives. If the Chinese government resorts to armed combat, there are a number of non-invasion options that would provide a plausible road to an acceptable political settlement for Beijing. The aim for China's leaders would be to build the circumstances for an ultimate success, defined in political terms rather than necessarily through direct military occupation. In this situation, seizing TSMC's foundries would be a byproduct of decisions made for other reasons. The whole thrust of China's economic and technological policies is now geared toward increased self-sufficiency. This involves a broad-based approach to moving up the semiconductor value chain by assisting Chinese enterprises in improving their own skills. In response to U.S. export controls, Huawei and SMIC are both attempting to develop chip manufacturing lines that are devoid of U.S. origin technology. Despite the enormous difficulties, the Chinese government's tremendous resources and the concentration of major sectors in China mean that, in the long run, Chinese chip design businesses may anticipate to rely less and less on TSMC. At this point, however, China's officials publicly recognize that the country's high-tech companies continue to rely on foreign inputs, and hence emphasize maintaining open international routes to receive them. With these channels already under pressure from U.S. decoupling policies and growing negative views in other advanced countries, Beijing is unlikely to imperil them further with high-risk bets that would deliver only short-term gains. Long-term concerns are likely to trump the urgent requirement to preserve access to TSMC's foundries for foreign countries adjusting their Taiwan policy. According to U.S. strategists, the ongoing shift in the cross-strait military balance in favor of China means that a defense guarantee to Taiwan cannot serve as a risk mitigation mechanism for reshoring cutting-edge foundry work. The U.S. is already taking substantial moves in this direction, including forcing TSMC to shift its operations away from Taiwan. Given enough determination and money, the existing capabilities of US-based corporations like Intel and GlobalFoundries are likely to offer a solid foundation for achieving reshoring within an acceptable time period. The process is more achievable for the most significant vulnerabilities, especially military applications, because these programs often do not rely on cutting-edge technology. Similarly, the Japanese government is said to have approached TSMC about building a fab in Japan. Under its push for technological sovereignty and strategic autonomy, the European Union is also encouraging the development of cutting-edge fabs within the EU. 17 member countries have pledged to build cutting-edge semiconductor manufacturing facilities in Europe. The harsh fact for Taiwan is that, even if it continues to decouple from China, the mainland will continue to be a more significant economic and security player for other nations. Governments throughout the globe are attempting to manage the risks associated with overconcentration in the value chain for critical technologies by diversifying supplier sources and increasing local manufacturing capability. From the standpoint of supply chain security, this is a more viable option than sustaining Taiwan's independence in the face of Beijing's determination to pursue unification. There are several reasons why foreign countries should assist Taiwan in maintaining its de facto independence from China. However, TSMC's clearly important role in the semiconductor supply chain is unlikely to tip the scales in favor of foreign governments. Even with TSMC on the scales, it is difficult to imagine external parties seeing their economic interests in Taiwan as outweighing those in China. If a case can be made for Taiwan's support against subordination by the People's Republic, it must be based on the same types of reasons that are most important to Beijing's leaders, political ones. Thanks for watching our video. We would appreciate it if you subscribed our channel and gave us a thumb. See you.